Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me to discuss why electric vehicle stocks in the sector are in overdrive is Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief at Investopedia. Caleb, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Good to be with you. And this is a sector that is as hot as tulips were in the 17th century, and everybody wants in on it. And there's so many ways for investors to access the market. The thing is, so many of these companies, except for maybe the Teslas that you've heard of and the legendary Fords and GMs of the world, which are now going electric, are very new with very thin business models and very short on sales, but very hot on investor interest.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the January 12th Investopedia Express newsletter, you called out Dow Jones data cited by Wall Street Journal. The average daily trading volume of the NEO ADR stock in U.S. markets over the past year was 111 million shares. This makes the Chinese electric car maker the second most actively traded stock during this period, trailing only Apple, which is incredible to me. What's driving this trend?
Well, NEO is an extremely hot stock. It was up some 1,100% in 2020, the ADR traded here in the US. But this is a very new company that had barely had sales in its last quarter that it recorded, except investors are so interested in taking part of the market. They know all vehicles are going to be electric at some point. We've obviously seen the hype behind the Tesla. We've seen a hype behind companies like the BYD that Warren Buffett has invested in China. They want a piece of this because that is the future. And you've watched these legendary car makers, GM, Fiat, and Ford, say they're fully electric as of 2024 or beyond. Their whole fleet is going to be electric. So this is where the future is. Tesla obviously got there first. NIO's been hot on the scene, but there's so many other electric vehicle makers that are on the scene right now or involved in SPACs that have investors so enthusiastic.
Let's review three of the individual names that have a little bit of play in the media.
Right. So obviously there's Nikola, and Nikola was very popular stock in 2020. It has this beautiful truck called the Badger, which I can't wait for it to come to the market because I want one or two or three. But Nikola ran into some issues. One, they were targeted by short sellers. One of them who claims that the CEO, the then CEO, made incorrect statements to shareholders. The SEC was looking into it. They had a partnership with GM. They'd had a partnership with Republic to make garbage trucks. All those are gone now. Still, the stock remains really widely traded and pretty hot. I was looking this morning across some of the online brokers. There's at least two or three, including NIO, including Nikola, that are among the most widely traded. So that trend from last year is still going on right now in 2021.
And as you had mentioned before, the more established automakers, businesses, and investors are also turning to the future of EV.
Right. So Ford, as we know, has said it's going to be all electric at some point. Its new Mustang, which is beautiful, is all electric. That's got back orders for days. Everybody wants a piece of that car. And then GM was out last week at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas talking about its new van, transit van that it's making. FedEx has a bunch of orders in for that. And they even rolled out a futuristic looking taxi that is like one of those flying taxis, autonomously flown, that is the future of transportation, the one that we watched in the Jetsons growing up. That's coming soon. But there's so many other car makers out there, including the BYDs of China. Of course, there's the Youngstown Motors up in the Detroit area that's very hot. And a lot of these, as I mentioned, are rolled into these special purpose acquisition company vehicles to go public. And you're able to participate as an investor in those SPACs, or you can buy the stock of some of these companies outright, but they are extremely volatile, widely traded, and many of them are so unproven, Joe, that investors really have to be careful with this sector.
And that's my last question to you. Is it time to put on the brakes? Of course, there's so many puns when you're talking about this group. Has the EV sector gotten ahead of itself, or is this a longer term investment that is the future and not simply a trading trend?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the price to earnings multiples, even the forward price to earning multiples, the traditional multiples that we grew up valuing companies, they're way out of whack. And you can start with Tesla, which actually has some profit, is an established company, has hundreds of thousands of vehicle sales every year. It's still got a forward PE of something like 200 to 1, 200 on a forward PE basis. But you can't look at that because that's not what this is about. This is about where do you think the future is going, and the market will value it wherever investors want to value it. So forget about traditional metrics. Yeah, they're way overbought. Yeah, they're way overvalued. But this is obviously where the trend is headed. They'll revert eventually to some reasonable multiples, but investors just want to own the sector right now.
All right, Caleb, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.